Hello and welcome to episode number 8 of the Private Investigator podcast that has no name, no intro music, no nothing. Just want to get you the information rather than waiting around for me to figure out how to add all that other stuff in. This edition is a straight up mailbag edition with a little bonus thing at the end for you. So I want to cover a lot of questions many questions I get over and over again in email. And I just don't respond to a lot of them personally. I feel a little bad about that, but I just don't. So let me just jump right in. I'm going to change names and some of the details of the emails. Since we are all private investigators or going to be private investigators, we sort of understand the elevated level of privacy that people need. And, you know, I just feel that way about the people who contact me. I'm sure nobody expected their question to become something in a public forum. Although these questions, they just come up so often, it's worth looking at. The first one is actually one that I did respond to personally. I'm going to call this person Jimmy. And Jimmy, I actually, if you're listening, thank you for the question. Here's what I got. Hi, Larry. I finally got some of your books, and I'm enjoying the dirty tricks so far, but I was wondering where do you search for automobile accident reports? I know you, so let me stop and answer that right now. Automobile accident reports are kept at a couple of different places, a couple different levels. The county, if the sheriff's office has taken the accident report, the sheriff's office will have a copy of that. If it's done in the city police department will have a copy of that. As far as I know, every place in the United States of America, this is public record, freely and easily accessible. Maybe a nickel a page if you're getting paper copies. This is just so commonly accessed. Now, an interesting thing for us as private investigators, so first of all, if you're doing an accident investigation or anything like that, you got to get the report. It's going to give you so much good stuff, the date, time, and location, the vehicles, the license plates of the vehicles involved, the driver's names, usually date of birth, addresses, phone numbers. Usually people put down their cell phone numbers. You're going to find passengers in the vehicle, passenger ages. There's a ton of good information and a narrative report of what actually happened. So if you're doing the accident report itself, maybe you're doing something for the insurance company, maybe a plaintiff or a defendant in a case, then you're going to find solid information that you need to really look at, because that's stuff that's going to be very important. Now, it may be right, it may be wrong. You can contest certain things about whether, say, a stop sign was visible, if there was a branch blocking the view, those types of things. But that's going to be your primary document to start out with. It's going to lead you on to further things like contact information for people who are around, witnesses, and if you want to do witness interviews and that type of thing. But big picture wise, if you are looking sometimes years later, these can be helpful for background checks. They can be helpful for skip tracing. They can be helpful for auto repossessions, which are essentially skip tracing. My favorite source to go to a lot of times is the state level, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, Department of Motor Vehicles, the State Department of Public Safety, something like that. These city and county reports funnel to them. Now, they're frequently, weeks behind schedule as far as getting the reports and then posting them. And just because one's not there, I wouldn't take it as gospel that it doesn't exist. What you have is a municipal government reporting to a state government with all the government workers in between, and mistakes happen. But think about this. If you find the online index, now maybe you're not going to find all the reports, although a lot of states you can, and get a PDF copy, it's wonderful. But to find out at the state level, the index, and be able to search by name, you might be surprised how helpful it is to have those records searchable by name for you. Maybe it's somebody you're looking for, or as with so much skip tracing, you're going to find their mom in those records, and that's somebody that now her phone number is there, and you can reach out to her by phone very easily and affordably to try to find her son, the skip that you're looking for. Maybe it's a neighbor or something like that. So don't overlook accident investigation records as a really, really valuable public record source. It's not a database you have to subscribe to. It essentially is not going to cost you any money. And so either at the very local level or at the state level, you're going to find that. Jimmy goes on to say, I know you sort of go against online courses, but I'm taking one just for as much knowledge as I can soak up. You know what? Good for you, Jimmy. Get the information you can. Read or watch the online videos. You got to be, I think, even more careful with the online videos than you do with books. I kind of consider those more reputable. But online videos, it's just so easy for someone to throw one up and say something stupid. Take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, soak up that information. If you want to get paid training from a PI school, a so-called PI school, you know what? You're going to probably learn something. Now it's just a question of whether it's worth it or not. Jimmy goes on to say, I've done a few surveillance jobs for friends and family friends as well over the years. Some I've gotten them results, and it was the absolute best feeling I've ever had. Then her asking, how did you find out? This and that, I guess I was just sneaky good, I told her. But I'm thinking, Jimmy says, of going into the process serving route, as I have no other experience. I feel I'm at an age when I want more of a career and something more for my children. Would it be illegal to set up a small business providing surveillance to worried parents? Okay, so we've kind of switched questions there a little bit, but Jimmy asked, he's thinking about going to process serving route. It's really, I would say, very easy to get hired as a process server, especially working for a big company. Got a lot of videos and training about that kind of stuff, and but you're not going to make as much money as if you open your own business, but you instantly have work, which means you're going to be instantly getting experience. And opening your own business is hard. It doesn't matter what kind of business it is. Getting clients is difficult and tricky. That's just life. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Process serving can be some real good, steady money. And, I know people who are serving, a dozen packs a day. They're doing very, very well for other companies. And there are people out there serving that many for their own company, keeping themselves very busy, as a matter of fact. For a lot of us starting out, or if you already have a detective agency and you're thinking about process serving, the way it was for me was it was that supplemental income. I didn't need to serve 10 a day. I wasn't interested in serving 10 a day. But, you serve 10 a month at, say, $65 a serve, and that's $650 coming in at the end of the month, which is kind of small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. But when you're starting out, and even after you've been doing it for a while, I'm not turning down $650, which probably, when all is said and done, is really closer to $500 in actual profit, even after taxes and that. But $500 a month, another $6,000 a year. It just really, really helped me when I was trying to get those other clients going, and then it led to other work as well, because those law firms really have a tendency to go on and hire you. So that's my view on process serving. But Jimmy does go on and ask, would it be illegal to set up a small business and provide surveillance to worried parents? Any question, all the time I get questions in email about is it legal to do this or that. I'm not an attorney. You got a question about what's legal or not legal, ask an attorney. I'm never going to be able to tell you that. And even if I know 100% for sure today that it's legal, it might not be tomorrow. The laws are changing. And locations change. What's legal in one state is not legal in another, sometimes even city to city. There are states that have no state licensing to be a private investigator. You can just, boom, call yourself a private investigator and open a business. But there are municipalities or even entire counties within those states that do have some kind of restrictions. So I just can't speak to what's legal or illegal, and no one else really can except for an attorney who's really well versed in what your particulars are. However, a business providing surveillance to worried parents, when you use the words business providing surveillance all together like that, that's private investigation work, and most places that requires a license. If you're not doing it with a license, then you got a problem. But notice those three, it's a business and providing surveillance. That's private investigator work. he goes on to kind of mitigate the question a little bit, as everybody does. And this is nothing against Jimmy, because this is what everybody does. You kind of say, well, I'm not really doing investigations. I'm just watching out for this or that. And he goes on to say they wanted the kids to be watched over while they were out with friends to see if somebody was up to no good. Because you had their parents' consent, I think it would be okay. Yeah, I mean, and that's what we all say. That's what everybody says when you're trying to find that loophole. And generally, if you got to struggle that much for a loophole, it's not there, or you're skating on really thin ice. So I would say don't try to offer surveillance as a business unless you've got a proper license and insurance in the area where you are. Jimmy closes out by saying, also, thank you for all the great information you provide. Jimmy, I did answer Jimmy in an email. And I just wanted to put this out here for everybody, though. And one thing that I mentioned in my email to Jimmy that I want to really spell out here is, and I'm just going to read what I wrote to Jimmy at this one little spot. Most states that require a license to be a private investigator have specific language about what a private investigator is. And they do this so a person can't claim to be some kind of safety consultant and really be conducting investigations. So really look at this. If you're considering trying to do investigative type work without a license because you're not, quote, really a PI, unquote, what is a private investigator and what is not a private investigator? That's probably spelled out in your state law. And no matter what you call yourself, if what you're doing falls within that definition that requires a license, then you're going to require a license. Next up in the mailbag is from Chelsea. She's a newbie PI. That's and her email reads, as my subject line states, I'm a newbie. I obtained my PI license late last year. I'm ready to start off with learning the basics. Okay, let me just take a pause there. Anybody who's not in the business yet or whatever, just because you got your license, everybody, private investigator, licensed private investigator, they must know what they're doing. No, not necessarily. Passing the state's required test, and even getting the experience requirements doesn't mean that you know some of the really vital stuff you need to know. So you can work as, say, a fraud investigator for a major bank for 2, 3, 4 years full time. You've got all the experience that's required. You take the state test. You do good enough to pass. Now you're a licensed private investigator. Think about it, though. You've never followed anyone. You've never done surveillance. You've never served process. Maybe you've done a little bit of skip tracing using the databases that your employer has provided for you or some internal sources. But man, there's a million things that you've not done. And take that fraud investigation, for example. Maybe you've done fraud investigation for that bank for 4 years, let's say. When you get out on your own and you're doing it, investigations, even kind of in that same genre, that same field of fraud investigations. At work, you may have never gone to the courthouse. At work, you may have never gone out and interviewed somebody. You may never have gone to the scene of a retailer to see what their layout is like. You may have never looked at issues of internal theft. You may have never interviewed an employee accused of theft. And I'm not saying you would necessarily have to do all of those things as a private investigator, but notice, the day job that you've done for years still didn't really prepare you for the real world of owning your own agency. So I just want to really compliment her on understanding the difference, that just because you got your license doesn't mean that you're ready to rip out of the gate and go. So good for you, looking to learn the basics. She goes on to say, I came across your training for process servers, and I think this is a great place to start. Do you agree? I think it's a good foot in the door with law firms, which are going to be good repeat clients for you over and over again. That's my feeling about it. Everybody needs a good process server. Lots and lots of places are secretly unhappy with their process server. And even if they do love their process server, and if this was a drinking game, I hope you're not drinking every time I say process server, but even for places that love their process server, things happen. And, they're going to need another one sooner or later. So I do feel like this is a decent place to start. And as I said earlier, it's just a great place to do enough business to make ends meet, to keep you going in business until you can establish the other type of work that you really want to do as a private investigator. She says, I want to learn different areas such as workers' comp, process servers, and to find folks as I start out. Also, I need to know what databases are good, either paid or free. I get this question all the time. And I am never going to recommend a paid database. It's just not going to happen. They come, they go. There are legitimate ones advertised in legitimate areas in our industry. And sometimes you have a little bit of a regional issue too, but less and less as the years go by. These things kind of scarf up everything. If you're finding them advertised in a print periodical for professional investigators, then I would consider that someone to look at as being a legitimate source. Here's the thing about all the really good ones: they're going to clear you. They're going to do a background check on you before they grant you access, even though they're a paid service and they're making money off of you. Now, in this case, she's got her license, so she's going to be good to go, get her approval for any database provider that she wants. But I'm just not going to name any one or the other, and kind of, in a sense, they're all basically the same, really. As far as free searches, that's where I just personally love to go as far as public records. And man, go everywhere that you find a public record. We've talked about accident reports already this episode, but I mean, there's arrest reports. If you pull a criminal file at the courthouse, you're going to have the complaint. You're going to have information about the officers. Ambulance runs are going to be public record. Just, there's a million things and a million, I can't even begin to name them all. But tons of stuff is public record, which means they're essentially free. Now, here's the catch-22 I'll give you on anything free that's online. If you're not getting it from the legitimate source, in other words, if you're not looking at, say, the real property recorder's office for your county, and you're trying to go through some other little scammy database online that's open to you without pre-screening you, they're probably a scam or a hustle to one degree or another. Just don't pay for or heavily trust free online searches that are search companies. Just, you got to be very careful of them. They got bad information a lot of times. So be careful of free, except for those real genuine public records generated by government offices. She continues on writing, please provide your thoughts on these issues I just told you about, and let me know if you're a real person. LOL. All right, I'm real. Not sure how old or new the information on your site is. Hope to hear back from you soon. And regrettably, she never did. This is it. This is as close as I'm going to get to answering that email. Not that I don't care, but I just get a ton of emails. How old or new is the information on my site? Surprisingly, I really try to stay away from the flash in the pan stuff, the things that come and go, this social media searches and those types of things. So if it's on my website, it's pretty darn rock solid. It's something that, some of this stuff has been used since the 1920s. And then some of it here, right, as we go into 2020, is newer. Everything that used to work pretty well that I talk about 20 years ago, or back even a generation before I got into it, a lot of that stuff is just now automated online. So it's still pretty darn solid. So is some of the information that I have online is a little out of date? I would say generally no, but it's real fundamental and basic stuff. And the thing is, a pretext is a pretext. Sometimes over the course of time, a certain type of pretext may become illegal. So you always have to watch that, and that's your responsibility to know what's legal and illegal in your area. But I think everything on my website right now is pretty darn up to date. Next email comes from Kyle. I was actually able to respond to him. And it's a very interesting question. Hey, Mr. Kaye. First, I love your videos. By the way, not Mr. Kaye, just Larry, everybody. You can always just write to Larry. Love your videos. They're amazing, and I can tell you really care about helping others. I listen to you often and have learned a great deal from you. Good. Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate it. My question is, how can I market my services in an area that seems to be a black hole of opportunity? Oh, my goodness. Absolutely. Don't we all feel that way sometimes? I live in a town which is a little over an hour from the nearest big city. There is literally nothing here but, and he goes on to describe, he has one major employer in the city, this town that he's in, and then all of that ancillary business that's around it. So, for example, maybe just one large hospital, but then there's pawn shops and car dealers and rental motels and stuff like that. Or maybe it's just one large government. They've got a federal building there, and then there's just the restaurants and that kind of stuff that goes on. And that's the situation he's in, and a lot of people are. So it just seems like you think, well, there's only one major employer in my town. How much business is there really? He says, I'm also a process server, and it brings in a little bit of money, but not enough to live on. Yep. I mean, that's, unless you want to really go whole hog process server, again, that's my experience. It's a type of thing that helped me make ends meet, and it really made the difference. But it's not something I would particularly want to do as a full-time career, personally. You can, people do, not my thing. So he's experiencing that too. He does process serving. But it's not bringing in all the money he needs. First of all, let me suggest, whoever you're process serving for, cross-sell your services. If you're a licensed investigator, going down to the bottom, Kyle is a licensed private investigator. So cross-sell your services. Make sure they know you're not just the process server. A classic story about the guy who gets his business cards printed, and every 6 months he has to go into the shop and he has to get new ones printed. And one day he comes into the shop and tells the business owner, take a look, I've got this new 60-page catalog with all my stuff. It's color and glossy print, and I'm just so proud of it, I wanted to show you. And the guy who prints his business card says, why didn't you come to me for this? He says, I just thought you printed business cards. And see, he never thought of this guy as being able to print catalogs or business proposals or any other service that he offered. He didn't think of him as a printer. He thought of him as his business card guy. So if you're serving process for law firms, make sure they understand you're a private investigator and the services you can offer them as far as witness interviews, accident investigations, and all those other things. I'd really like to drum up some more work. He says, my PI is all on my own, and I currently work under another PI's license. I'd really like to drum up more work, but I just don't have a clue as to what I should try to do. I don't have a degree. I am an older guy, and I really don't want to go back to school. Any advice? Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for all you do, and God bless you. Okay, perfect timing to reveal that I just released, just in the last, 48 hours or so, here in right now I'm broadcasting. This is February 4th, 2020. So just actually on the 1st, just a few days ago, my latest book, How to Make Money as a Private Investigator, Essential Tactics Guaranteed to Boost Sales. That just went out, published live, ebook or paperback, and it's available over at Amazon. Full of ideas. It is all of this stuff. How you can get clients, contact them, what to say to them, all those types of things. If you're in business now and struggling, you're going to love this book. If you're thinking about getting into business, the private investigator business, I highly recommend it, or process serving for that matter. I highly recommend it because it's going to, before you start, give you some real heads up things that you're going to say 6 months or a year in, I wish I had known that. So that's my latest book. I'm Larry Kaye. How do you just join us here in the middle of a podcast? But if you're keeping track, I'm Larry Kaye, and that's my new book that's out, How to Make Money as a Private Investigator, Essential Tactics Guaranteed to Boost Sales. Let me tell you what I replied here to Kyle. I said, I think that primary employer and the employees girlfriends and wives and relatives could be a market for you. And what I'm thinking here as I wrote back was, there's drama, there's things that go on, and I am not a fan of the infidelities and those types of things, but it happens, and it's epidemic. So there are things going on with that primary major employer, even in your relatively small town, that could keep you busy forever. So I went on to write him, and I said, consider specializing in helping those employees, their family members, friends, that type of thing. So what you want to consider is writing blog articles about how private investigators can help that particular market, and that may set you apart from other PIs in your area. So, of course, much of what we do as private investigators is the same for every client, but you can emphasize the particular uniqueness and hardships of your potential clients, and that will set you apart from other PIs. So, for example, when you write your blog article about work-life balance, or you need help with work, and you talk about the stressors of the medical community and how people frequently have to pull double shifts or those types of things. When you talk about workers' comp claims and how in a medical field lifting heavy patients or having improper gear or being on your feet all day. And notice there's injuries in every field, in every industry. So look at the major employer in your relatively small town and focus your writing and your marketing on their specific problems, so they go, yeah, this private investigator gets it. So I hope that's helpful on the marketing side of things and getting more business, even when it looks like your place is a black hole of opportunity. One final thing in the podcast this week, and it's not from the mailbag. It's actually not quite a year old, just about a year old. But I wanted to share it because I do also have my book, 51 Dirty Tricks Bad Guys Really Hate. And the concepts behind that book, and I had to review it the other day for other purposes, and I kind of have forgotten over the years how many of those tricks can be legitimately used by private investigators and police officers, for that matter. I think of it as dirty tricks. The reason I say they're dirty tricks, and there are some that are in there that are completely unethical, you should never touch with a 10-foot pole, but there's a lot, and the reason I consider them dirty tricks is because they just go beyond what the bad guys would consider fair. It's legal, it's ethical, but it's like, really, when they get busted, they go, that's just not fair that you did that. And of course it's fair, and I'm going to give you an example. This is not from my book. This is from last year, back in 2019. It's a report about how in New York City Transit Authority has caught some taggers, some vandals. And so what they did was they were having just a repeat problem. So they built a false wall. And let me tell you right now, just the beauty of this is, who thought of this? Was this the administration? Was this management? Was this upper level? Was this some outside think tank? No. The story, as it's reported, is the officers who know the station well asked if they could put up a temporary wall which would create an enclosure or small rooms so that the officers could do operations at this end of the station where the vandalism was happening. Noting, they said that the cameras don't even cover that area well. The wall, which was made of plywood rather than steel slats, was built on the MTA ramp, and one of the officers hid out behind it, and they waited. They waited behind this false wall, this little fake room that they had built, and they caught the guy doing vandalism. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't think they did vandalism on the false wall itself, although that would have been super sweet in my view. There was a particular support beam that was getting tagged over and over again. But I just love that they used this sneaky tactic, this what I would call a dirty trick, in order to catch this vandal. How long did it take for this to work? They built the wall. And then they didn't put anybody behind it for the first 3 days, and then but the very first day they put an officer behind that wall, they caught a guy, the specific guy that was doing a specific vandalism they were looking to catch. So just an interesting thing. If you like that kind of sneaky, clever stuff used against bad guys who think they're smarter, faster, stronger than everybody else, then maybe you would also like my book, 51 Dirty Tricks Bad Guys Really Hate, also over at Amazon. In the meantime, feel free to send me emails if you want. If you have questions, you can reach me at larry.kaye, that's Kaye, at shadowanyone.com, larry.kaye at shadowanyone.com. Probably won't get back to you personally, but maybe your email questions will show up in a mailbag episode in the future. In the meantime, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.